We're deeply grateful. Vicky Karuga is a creative, dynamic executive leader and entrepreneur, having begun her professional journey as a registered architect of 18 years, creating and transforming spaces for various organizations. She later transitioned into managing director for Profiles International, a leading talent management solutions provider that provides itself in offering sustainable solutions for business's most important resource, that is people. This transition saw her delve into the world of psychometrics, digital learning, and emotional intelligence, leadership, and culture. She leads the Genos Pan-Africa Distributorship. As a woman in business, she is the COMESA Federation of Women in Business, Kenya chapter president. She's a music enthusiast and plays drums with a rock band when she can and sings with the Nairobi Music Society. She believes in the power of people, in self-discovery, and draws greatly from the stories of inspiration told by others. Today's webinar sits at the intersection of two powerful organizational tools, psychometric assessments and framework mapping. We have designed this session to help you, our participants, clients, and partners, understand how these tools work together to unlock deeper talent insights and build more effective aligned workforces. The world of work is evolving rapidly with artificial intelligence, for instance. Organizations that invest in understanding their people, their strengths, their styles, their potential are the ones that lead and adapt and sustain success. At AMADI, we believe that people intelligence is not a luxury. It is a strategic imperative. We trust by the end of this session, you will leave with new insights, practical knowledge, and renewed confidence in psychometrics as a strategic tool for your organization. To our esteemed speaker, thank you for your time and expertise. To our participants, thank you for investing your time with us. We hope this experience will be both enriching and impactful. Once again, join me in welcoming our host, Vicky.
Thank you very, very much, Manku. It is indeed a pleasure to be here yet again. And I love the fact that we are getting into the place where, at least for now, we're getting to talk about the use of information and data that we get from psychometrics, from processes to make our HR and talent decisions a lot more based on science, so to speak. And it is one of the reasons why I guess I got into this area. It was very, very interesting to see how you can actually utilize the science of people and use it to make decisions that were largely subjective because it relied on us and our intuition and our history and memory to make better decisions when it comes to people. So today's session is titled Framework Mapping and Psychometrics. And so I'm going to get into a presentation. You can let me know when you see it. Let me see. Give me just 1 second. Let me know when you see my presentation. Uncle, you can see my presentation? Or Liz, can you see my presentation?
Yes, I can see your presentation, Vicky, from this side.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so I would like to. Sorry. I would like to start the conversation by talking about connecting competency frameworks to talent decisions. And many organizations, I must say, have competency frameworks. And they have a lot in terms of pieces of a puzzle. They possibly have the competencies defined, maybe per role, sometimes organizational wide. These are the competencies we would like to see. They probably also have assessments. They're using some form of assessments to assess their people. They also, on the L&D side, have programs that they are rolling out, whether these are leadership, management, whether they are technical, whatever programs these are, we have learning and development that is taking care of this angle. Then we have another angle where we're talking about the human resources, supporting the business in terms of succession planning. So you have quite a few initiatives going around, but these initiatives more often than not seem to operate independently. And therefore lies then the question that you end up making important talent decisions without really harnessing information or data that is apparent and is available to you from these different pieces of the puzzle that are in our world today or in our organizations today. So today is about connecting that particular connection or putting the bridge, so if I can say so, around how can we make this all come together. So why do most competencies fail? I'm willing to bet, and you can answer on the chat, that most people here today have a competency framework. And possibly you can answer and tell me if you do have a competency framework wherever you are working. And these have been developed through most likely either human resource and some brainstorming around the leadership and the human resource facilities, or even extensive workshops. Sometimes it goes into that, hiring of consultants to come and put together what we call competency framework. So let me know if you have a competency framework today, wherever you are working, and you can just give me a yes or a no. And I can see someone has answered, yes, we do. And then also let me know whether you utilize this competency framework when you're recruiting. And again, you can just tell me yes and no. Yeah. So think about it. This competency framework, where are you utilizing it? Where is it being used? Because that is normally the question. Are we actually utilizing our competency frameworks the way that they are meant to be used? And you find that they are used once in a while. Employees rarely see them for development, so they rarely even know or refer to them. And I'm talking about employees here, not the employers themselves, who might know that they exist. So they're rarely able also to reference their work back to, these are the competencies I need to succeed at this particular organization or at this department, and that is open to them. And then we find that and there are many places I've said succession decisions then still remain largely subjective. So who are we succeeding? We think this person can manage people. We have seen the way that they have been carrying themselves. And rarely do we come back to say, these are the competencies we are trying to push or to support or to bring to life, so that then they are connected with the talent decisions that we're making. So most competencies then come out when we're doing performance reviews. At that year, once a year appraisal time is when we're like, okay, so these are the competencies we're assessing against. But what about the daily work, the hiring, the development conversations, even the mentoring, the shadowing conversations, the stretch assignments? How are we connecting them back to the competency frameworks? And how are we connecting it back to our outcomes? And without a shared framework, talent decisions will then vary from manager, from teams, creating inequity and unpredictability, because we don't have a common theme that we're using for checking what is it that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So there's a clear and logical chain that connects business to its people. And usually the strategy is the place that we start. Where are we going? But the fundamental question is, how do we move from strategy to people decisions? We understand the strategy. We understand what the business wants to do, what it wants to achieve. We understand what the drivers will be. But then how then do we then build capability around these people so that then they are able to achieve what the business required. So you find that linking back these competencies back to the business and back to what business hopes to achieve sometimes looks like a little bit of work. So we'd rather look at the numbers. Did you achieve your number? And then the other KPIs that are then related to the drivers of the strategy. Did we achieve this? But then what about the person and the things and the skills and the abilities that they have? How do we link them up? So what is competency mapping? Yeah. Competency mapping is simply the process of linking what business needs to what people need. Probably easier said than done. So if a strategy or if a business has reached a point where, it has been around for some time, been doing the same product, but now the competition has come and the products that it was delivering, the competition is offering at even better rates. And this business now seriously needs to redefine and rethink its products. So it needs to innovate. What competencies then will support that innovation? So you're thinking about the business itself and what it needs to survive. It needs to change the way it thinks and to be able to thrive. It needs to get into the blue ocean territories. So what competencies are going to support innovation? If the business is such that things like cost efficiencies are very important, so the prices of things delivered are already set, and the only thing you can adjust is how you deliver that product. So cost becomes a very important factor. And I'm just giving an example. So one of the things that is tracked is cost efficiencies across all boards. Then that means that for us to have cost efficiencies, first we need to be communicating with each other and collaborating between departments to see where can we save this cost. So then what competencies are going to enable that to happen? Because it's not just a matter of saying, guys, our business thrives on us guys being cost efficient. Yeah. It's about understanding what kind of competencies drive that. If we are going through a change and we understand that leadership will be critical during this change, whatever that change is, how do we identify these leaders? How do we identify these champions? How do we even build a pipeline of champions that can push this particular initiative? How do we then create a chain of evidence that we are actually putting work into what we need, right? So why does it matter? Because it creates a common language across not just human resource functions, but even across all departments to understand what it is that matters when it comes to people. Yeah, it will reduce subjectivity and inconsistency and help us then say, what assessments do we require so that they then start serving a strategic purpose? Not just saying we're hiring, let's call so and so to do for us the psychometrics. Once the psychometrics are done, we throw them we throw them into a box. In fact, most likely, once we see the scores, we pick the person, we forget about those assessments entirely until the next time we to hire, or the next time we need to do a 360 initiative, because some people have complained about the behaviors of few managers and we feel like we need to get feedback so they can develop. So we are connecting individual capability to organizational goals and trying to make talent investment a lot more measurable and less subjective. So we stop hiring or promoting for impressions. We stop trying to look for reasons why we think this person is capable, and we start showing evidence, evidence-based ability that can be linked back to what the organization is hoping to achieve. So everything really should begin with strategy. Where are we going? Not assessments, not training, not recruitment, not even the competency models. It is about what is the organization trying to achieve. When we determine that and then we deeply understand that, we can then understand what capabilities do we need, which competencies then support these capabilities. How will we then be able to develop these particular capabilities? How do we measure whether these capabilities are there or not? So collective abilities of an organization to deliver can then be measured, and we can say that from an organizational wide perspective, this is what we're leaning towards. And we've noticed that we have a big gap on this particular section. And that will mean for the business, it will not naturally be able to adopt a certain way of thinking or of doing things that we have identified as critical to the business achieving its goals. But now, not all competencies are equally visible or easy to measure. And understanding how they layer together helps us choose the right tools and the development strategies for each level. So many organizations will focus heavily on knowledge and on skills, but that's only part of the equation. And I think when we all think about the model of learning, where we talk about what do I know, what can I do, how do I act, we see behavior as one of the highest forms of learning. When people can start changing, it's called the Kirkpatrick, changing their behavior, that it can be observed, then we know that learning has taken place because there has been a change in behavior. So knowledge and skills is just part of it. Yeah. What do I know? What can I do? And then how do I then typically act? So two people can have the same identical qualifications, but have very different levels of success. Why? Because behavior matters, motivation matters, and their potential also matters. And this is where psychometrics become really, really useful, because they are then able to give you information on layers that you possibly cannot be able to see with the visible eye. And so with a good assessment, you can be able to tell a person's preferred behavior. With a good assessment, you can tell what actually drives them and what their needs are and what their potentials can be. So you start with the base, then you move to the middle, and then you move to the end, but which is the most predictable long-term success of whether this person is actually going to fit into where the organization is going into the long term. So how do psychometrics add value? When applied to the dimensions of human performance that are latent or that are hidden, that are hard for us to absorb, we actually get deeper drivers of how people think, relate, adapt, and grow. And so we can therefore be able to predict their needs, whether it comes to development needs, coaching needs, job requirements, and job needs. We ask questions such as, how does this person approach problems? Do they typically come from the area of, change is not necessary unless it is absolutely necessary? And remember the first example I gave about an organization requiring innovation in order for it to stay alive. So you're already starting to see that's going to be a gap with this person. And no matter how much this person tells you they're innovative, it does not come naturally for them. They're going to struggle with change, and adaptability is not an easy thing for them. So again, how adaptable are people? How if we are requiring people to work together collaboratively, which people easy, which one will find it difficult, who needs a bit more of coaching? What motivates them? How are they likely to fit in a different role? So if we're talking about succession planning based on competencies, so we measure tendencies and we are able to see behavior, we're able to understand motivation, we're able to look at the potential, especially when it comes to cognitive flexibility, learning agility, and we can even tell that, because we want, as people rise up and grow into higher roles, we also want them to be the kind of people who strategically can think further. So, I mean, I can say I think very strategically, but there are certain assessments that can tell you, as someone who is my manager, that possibly I can only think, the complexity of my thinking can only be up to 2 to 3 years. And this becomes very, very important when we are talking about someone who's steering an organization for about 2-3 years, but their decisions are going to impact that organization's ability to thrive for the next 5 years, right? So emotional effectiveness, the ability for us to manage ourselves, read others, navigate complexity, Just currently right now, we're having an assignment with an organization that had command and control as its culture. And that culture worked because they were driving growth. And the founders, of course, had a lot of information and a lot of knowledge, and they knew exactly what they were doing. But after about 26 years, obviously, we have different generations in the workplace, and we have different people coming from everywhere who have different ideas. And the ability now to be able to manage oneself so that you can allow all these people to thrive in this organization has become the core skill that is required right now to be able to develop that open culture, because what has happened is that the organization can no longer thrive. If we think about organizations in terms of being human beings, we can say that it's at the area where it's a young adult. And so the young adult wants to run itself. It does not need its founders anymore. And the founders now have to release and give space for the organization to be what it wants to be. For some of the organizations, they've been around for 60, 70 years, and that's a whole different conversation. So each of them needs, that's the time they need to reinvent themselves. So each organization will require different things depending on where the organization is. So you'll find that if you've been able to identify and sit down and do your framework mapping, then you will be able to understand then what it is that you need to be checking. What do you need to understand about the different assessments that are there, and how will they add value to your work as a human resource professional who is supporting the business in delivering to its strategy. So no single assessment measures everything, and that's the other mistake that we do. For example, when we are hiring, we might pick one particular assessment and use it, on all leadership, but not all leadership is the same. We might pick one other assessment at graduate, trainee, entrance, and use that for all of us. But psychometric assessments in themselves are built to capture different things, and each tool is built for a specific purpose. And in the last webinar that I had, I remember I said that this is one of the areas that we have found has a lot of misuse. So we get a tool and we find that it is used for something very different, and therefore losing its relevance. And again, using one tool for every decision is a common mistake, but a very costly mistake, because what happens is then we're trying to bend that tool to make decisions with it that were not meant for that particular tool. So if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But the most mature organizations will use multiple points of data. And the formula usually is we want to interview, which is another form of assessment. We want the persons to also experience and be able to give us feedback around how they're finding the roles that they're taking on board. We also want performance data from each and every single individual. So we want their history. We want to have context. We want their managers to give us their opinions. But what are they giving? What structure are they using to give us all these things so that, again, they don't become subjective? So how do we map competencies back to assessments? Whatever form of assessment it is, whether it is an interview, whether it is a manager appraising an employee, whether it's actually a psychometric assessments that we've run to, how do we map this back to assessments? And this is where theory becomes practical. Let's take just collaboration, for instance. Many organizations say that collaboration is important, but how are you measuring it? I'll give another example. Just the other day, again, in an organization that now has a new set of values that they want to see, we went in and just did DISC, and we found that majority of the senior team and the next level, which is now the next level at the senior team, which is now the heads of department, fall in the dominant personality and the conscientious personality. This means that for these two personalities, if we are to look at it now from an from a collective culture, do not value naturally, do not prefer to, or do not possibly work towards fostering and building relationships with others. In fact, for the most part, they're what we call lone rangers, who prefer to work alone and pursue their goals and their quality at their own time. So when the culture champions say we need collaboration and they don't see it working without understanding the why, then they just speak about it, from lip service. We need to collaborate further. But looking at the disc from a measurable perspective, it is telling us that this particular persons are going to have a problem without going through some form of intervention, just collaborating. So we have to sell the why. Why the collaboration? How does it look like? And then we have to take them through 360s so that then they can be able to understand how their personality styles are also being felt by the people around them. They can get meaningful feedback. So possibly now we're thinking about, we need to take them through courses on emotional intelligence, building their ability to have better interpersonal styles, to build empathy, and to also build trust. So because we have that information, we are able to make better decisions. And this can then be used from one particular assessment to another. So how do we then map across the life cycle of an employee? The same framework should support the employee on their journey in an organization, from hiring to onboarding to development to succession or talent mapping, and even to promotion, so that then each and every single part of that talent journey has some basis or some form of framework that employees find are fair, are consistent, that are allowing them, even themselves, like I said, to be able to also determine their own journey, because they can see the goals of, they can measure themselves against what is truly expected. So how do you define and communicate the behaviors and the values your organization truly needs? How do you attract those? How do you select against those defined competencies? How do you then use the insight from selection to be able to tell, for this particular person, for us to accelerate integration, this is what we need to take them through, because we have information from the interviews that we did, from the psychometric assessments that we did, and even from the information from the referees that we called, and they gave us a bit more information about this person. So we know, even from a term of training, what interventions we need to take with this person over the journey of a long period of time to take them to wherever they need to be. We know that we have certain competencies we require at certain levels. And even if we start taking a huge pool of people through those competencies, we're able to measure and see these persons are actually able to, they have the potential. And so we can focus a little bit more on them. And even as they rise, we can see this person is, 2 years away, this one is 1 year away, this one is 3 years away. And so we're making more data-driven decisions with the talent that we have. So how do we use it when we talk about recruitment? We know that recruitment becomes much stronger when we know what we're looking for. And I think I shared in the last webinar how I would go to recruitment agencies, and they would tell me that, Vicky, we know how a successful person looks like. And I hear it all the time. I know how a successful person looks like. I know someone who come here and they will stay with the organization because I know what I'm looking for. But usually that kind of insight comes from memory. It comes from the people who've experienced, who have given us what we would like to call a good experience. Sometimes it comes from us looking for people like us. Sometimes it comes from us being in a certain school and behaving in a certain way. And so when we get people coming in from these particular types of schools and they're able to speak at a certain type of way, then we decide that they will make a great fit. But they do not bring sometimes the level of challenge that is required in that organization, because you're all speaking the same way. They might not bring the kind of different expertise or different opinions, because different will not be rewarded. And we are not looking at different in an objective way. So I can have someone coming in here who's very different to my personality, but because I know why and which competencies they are bringing, I am able to then work with them. But if I see them the first time and they're just different, already my judgment with them is a bit biased. So we first have to start from the strategy, and having defined then what are the things that are required, what capabilities, what skills are required for the people who are working with us, then we can replace that gut feel that I'm talking about with a more consistent process that speaks back to the business. So we have to start by identifying the successful competencies. Very many times, a psychometric as a psychometric assessments company, do we get people calling in and saying, we need this role assessed, and I'm like, okay, give me the JDs, and then the JDs are very generic. So like, are you sure this is what you need? So we're like, okay, let's just have an interview to really understand what you need. And when we have the interview, it's very, very different from the JD. So we're like, but this is the JD. So we're like, do you have a competency framework? It's in the JD. So we haven't really thought about what competencies make us make the role successful, and what will make that specific position be able to achieve what it's supposed to achieve. So we really have to sit and pay attention, because you have to map those competencies into the assessments that you take. Most assessments come predetermined. They come with a set of behavioral questions, and it is up to then you to be able to map it back to what you want to see, and to ask your assessment provider, if I am looking for collaboration, then what in this assessment, which elements in this assessment are going to point me to the fact that this person is more naturally inclined towards collaboration. And then using that, then we are not just looking at the assessment and saying, oh, this person scored a 70%, this one scored an 80%, so we're going to take the 80% one. We're making more in-depth decisions. We're even going into the psychometric assessment and saying, okay, this person may have scored a 75%, but in what we are calling our critical competencies, they actually scored much better than this person who scored 80%. So that way, you're not just using the psychometric assessments just, from the information on the first page. You're going a little deeper, and you're using information that is available to you in all assessments that gives you a deeper understanding of this person. And so you reduce the bias, and usually work seems hard when you do not know or have a certain way of moving forward. And that's when we tend then to miss out and say, okay, I think we just take the top number. But if we have a defined structure, we're able to do it much better. What about leadership positions, and how do we use framework mapping in leadership positions? Most leadership programs will fail because they're just generic. Let's go attend the Blue Star program. Let's go attend the Great Leader program. Let's go attend we've seen this other program. It's being delivered by so-and-so. Your next the most effective, or the social CEO, or whatever it is, let's go do it because it's great. So when they're generic and everyone attends the same platform, then you're assuming that everyone has the same development needs. But having this framework and having people assessed against the framework then allows you to be more specific in how you are being develop different people and meet their different needs. One leader might need influence and skills, another might be emotionally tone deaf, and so they need to have coaching along. Another may not be able to fully grasp what strategic thinking is. Others may be some of them are not natural team builders or team players. So they might be destroying their teams more. And we all know that leaders are the primary source of engagement in organization. So you are able to identify the gaps, you're able to build targeted development plans, and you're also able to support succession readiness. Practical examples of considering a leadership framework, around 5 core competencies
And each can be mapped back to a set of psychometric tools, and not only just psychometric tools, but it can be mapped back to interviews. It can be mapped back because you have given the managers a structured way of being able to appraise the people who report to them. It can be mapped back against that particular scores that they've been getting. So if you're looking at all the data you're getting all around, you can actually sit down and say, these are the 5 areas that you want to focus on when it comes to leadership. So is this person self-aware? And how can you build self-awareness? And how are thinking to take them through something that helps them understand big picture anticipation and how to grow it, how to grow the ability to make decisions in complex environments. Do you are you able to define and see their level of influence? Yeah. Are you able to ensure that not only are they working effectively across boundaries, but they're also building the operational networks or the strategic networks that are required? Are they change champions? Yeah. Will they be able to push and inspire others towards the change that is required during uncertainty? Will they be able to foster the resilience and adaptability that is required because of our ambiguous nature? So if I can ask you the question now is, if you look at these competencies, which ones do you think your leaders would struggle with? And this is just a question. So under self-awareness, strategic thinking, influence, collaboration, and change leadership, which one do you think your leadership would struggle with? Yeah. So imagine your organization has identified a critical priority: building a pipeline of future-ready leaders capable of navigating rapid change and growing complexity. That is the assignment. And they have looked around and seen, we don't have people who can take over. We've been so focused on working, and that's what happened. We've been so focused on growing this particular organization, we forgot to grow the people. So we've been doing, and now we have come and realized, oh my goodness, we have a gap. Because if these leaders are not there tomorrow, we are not sure whether we'll survive. So this is the question. Which competencies will matter the most? Given your organization's specific culture, strategy, and challenges, which 4 or 5 leadership competencies do you think are most critical to define and develop? Yeah. And this is a question to you that you can just write down. Yeah. And I will read the answers on the chat. No answer is wrong or right. We're just having a conversation. So which ones do you think? I'm waiting for some answers on the chat. Anyone? Okay, let me see what I have. Critical thinking. Thank you. Change leadership and influence. Thank you. We want to build a pipeline of future-ready leaders capable of navigating rapid change and growing complexity. Critical thinking and self-awareness. Thank you. Yes, so, I mean, of course, this would be the result of having a brainstorming session, several workshops, extension, because it also will depend on, of course, the nature of your business, and the strategy of your business and all those things. But I mean, critical thinking is right up there because you're talking about navigating rapid change. Yeah. Self-awareness and emotional intelligence, yes, because if you're navigating rapid change and ambiguity and complexity, you need to be able to influence people and to motivate them, because change is not easy. Change is actually emotionally draining, and the more ambiguous the environment we operate in, the more emotionally drained we get. And if we then don't have leaders with us who can be able to help us problem solve and navigate those particular changes, and we end up having a burnt out workforce. So yes, these are all great competencies to start with. And now imagine that, okay, fine, so we've identified these competencies. So what assessment tools? And this could be a combination of, interviews. It could be a combination of performance appraisal data, 360s, other psychometric assessments, surveys. What would you use to be able to create a robust way of understanding who's ready? Yeah. And what will give you the most complete and accurate picture about who is ready and who is possibly has 2 years to go or 3 years to go. So that's just a short exercise. So common mistakes that we make in framework matching. The one that I see most making is buying assessments before they know what problem they're trying to solve. In fact, it is about fulfilling that need just to have psychometric assessment. So it's part of the process, but it's just an answer to the process. And this is when you say that the process, you're then a slave to the process. Because if you think about that process, what value is it adding? That you're being able to find as a particular number and be able to say, feed it into the system and say this person scored 80%, then you have barely scratched the surface of the psychometric assessment that you're using. Even when it comes to development, that you are able to do a 360 and then you are able to take this person for a development training, that in itself is a plus. But then looking back and reporting on what we're trying to say about the business is, has this contributed or brought this person closer to being able to deliver to the promises that he or she has made when it comes to business? So every well-intentioned team will fall into the predictable trap when implementing competency frameworks and psychometric assessments. And I remember getting called into a call where they had a competency framework, and all they wanted was an awareness raised around what the competency framework was. But that alone is not enough. Yeah. So we have to start by saying, what competencies do we need? And like we talked about earlier, it's not one tool that's going to fit into this interrogation of whether we are aligned as a people to the business needs. It's not even just one way. What toolkit are you going to need? Then you can start looking for the tools that you require, for the assessment catalog that you can say, this one will answer to my needs. Using one tool for everything over relying on a single instrument. So I go into organizations and they tell me, here, we use this one. So you use it for everything. We use it for recruitment. We also use it for succession planning. Some tools are defined to be versatile, but then some cannot speak to some of the things you need to see, especially when it comes possibly to feedback from the people around the table. Personality assessments are great, but when they are coupled with 360 assessments, they become even better, because then you're looking at those blind spots that people might not have. So measuring non-strategic competencies that are not linked back to the business. And therefore, you're just wasting time. They might be useful, but then you might end up having people latch onto something that is not really part of the discussion, and then creating a lot of noise that deviates the discussion from where it was actually meant to go. For example, not even being able to explain why, we are doing a 360. And so therefore, the fact that this 360 was done and someone got some feedback that was a bit harsh derails the whole process meant to be for development, and people start focusing on just that feedback that they got and who said it and why did they say it. And there you have another problem. Then not being able to interpret results, not having qualified people to interpret the results, not having qualified people actually even sit down and put those results together, because they need context, they need evidence from prior, possibly engagements that are done to show that they will actually translate into a meaningful action. So these are just but 4 of some of the common mistakes that we do. So if we consider what we've been talking about now, about framework mapping, and I would put framework mapping into the box, if you talk about Steve Covey's box of productivity, you know, he says the first box is urgent and important. And then the second box is always important but not urgent. And this is where strategic decisions sit. The third box is not important but urgent. This is where emails sit, and all manner of WhatsApp conversations and many meetings. And then the fourth one, of course, is not urgent and not important. And this is where WhatsApp, TikTok, and Instagram sit. So this sits on the second quadrant, the most useful quadrant, which is this is important. But because it might not seem urgent, we might not pay attention to it, because we end up paying attention to the things we call urgent and important, which then makes us very short term in terms of view. So they might take longer to do successfully, and it might take longer then to map out psychometrics. So that means also it might be a bit more expensive because you have to get the right people to work with you. But in the long run, they give you a better business outcome, and they also allow you to be able to prove to the business that this actually works. So the future of talent belongs to organizations that are going to harness their data, and not just their performance data, but even their potential or the capability data. The behavioral data, I talked about the DISC, where we saw the team's behaviors leaned on one side. And so through that, analyzing that particular information, you're able to understand what you need to do with these particular people. Yeah. So being able to shift from roles to skills and to capabilities to drive workforce planning will be a major shift that we will see. Having AI-enabled talent insights, you can just about use AI for everything now, but it helps in being able to make sense of some information, surfacing initial patterns, allowing you to interrogate information that you're getting across large populations, so that then you're able to see what it is that you require. So you need to move from intuition to evidence-based talent management. And this is where the opportunity is, and it moves us from being administrators of people processes to architects of organizational capability. And this is now where strategic human resource will live. I was speaking to a gentleman today, and he was telling me, we want to scale, and we want to scale 4 times in the next 2 years. I mean, we want to quadruple our size in the next 2 years. That's a strategic decision. So where is he starting? From first mapping what has been successful. What are the skills they will need? What are the competencies the organization will require? And bring that down now, right down to the roles and everything. And that requires that to be from a data-driven perspective, and not in the old ways where I used to say, let's employ so-and-so, let's employ this other person. No, we have tools that we have been gifted with. That means that we can then be able to make business cases so clear to the business leadership that they are able to understand what can we target in terms of our growth and in terms of investment in our people. So 4 principles that I would say I would end with, or 4 key takeaways that I would end with, is that competency frameworks create clarity. They take longer but they create clarity. They make expectations explicit and consistent. And one of the things people want is to know what is required of them and how can they grow and how can they assist in making impact. The second is, yes, psychometrics will provide you evidence only if you're not buying them first, using them and discarding them, but that you are using them to give you information on an already established framework. They add a layer of objectivity and predictive power to every stage of the life cycle. Third is framework mapping creates alignment. It's a deliberate act linking competencies to assessments, assessments to developments, strategy to people. A framework will come out into your main decision-making system. And then last but not least, better alignment will always produce better decisions into strategy. And this means stronger hires, more targeted development. In fact, even when you're procuring your digital learning systems, you know exactly what you need them for. Instead of just having a digital learning system that provides courses for everyone and anyone, all and sundry, and therefore the end product, if you look at the return on investment on this particular system, only 10 to 15% of the users are actively using this particular e-learning platform. Why? Because this particular thought process was not undertaken. And so even measuring the business impact becomes not a nice to have at all. And it's something that supports growth at scale. So I will leave you with this thought. The goal is not to really assess people. It's to understand them well enough so that we can support them to succeed. Assessments are meant to help us see people more clearly, place them more wisely, develop them intentionally, and create the conditions in which they and the organization can thrive. So we want to be able to say that we can hire better, develop better, lead better, and build stronger organizations. So if your organization's future depends on people, how confident are you that you are measuring the capabilities that matter the most? And with that, I thank you for your time, and I now take questions and hand it back to you, Manku. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Vicky. And this is Chazia from AMADI. And I just pick off your last thought saying that we are creating an environment for which employees would be able to thrive. Thank you so much, Suwiele, for just unmuting your microphone. So I've got two questions coming out of the chat section. And this is the time when we're going to take questions. I would encourage those of you with questions to just kindly post them in the chat. However, if you're unable to find the chat sections, please feel free to raise your hand so that we can acknowledge your question and possibly give a response to it. So the first question that I have for you, Vicky, is coming from Mr. Kefas Karuga. I think this is a follow-up. If you remember, even in the first session that we had, the first webinar, he had a question, and the question is, as a recruitment agency, Mr. Siwieli, we're kindly asking if you could mute your mic, please. In case you have a question, just raise your hand and then we'll be able to address it. Thank you. So the question is, once again, as a recruitment agency, how do you define competences and choose which tools to buy, especially when you're in the process of buying some tools? Vicky, that's a question for you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. At the recruitment agencies, I think it is well within your interest to have a wide array of assessments with you. So for me, if I was a recruitment agency, I would have different partnerships, not necessarily buy the tools. Because, for example, at Profiles, we partner with very many recruitment agencies, and then they have access to our array of assessments. But I also know that they partner with others who possibly provide assessments that define competencies that we don't possibly test for. So my advice to you is have different providers come and present to you each and every single one of their assessment, what it maps, have them also be able to empower you to understand how to interpret those assessments. Because for you, the most important conversation will be with your client and understanding, because your competencies will change. Each and every single client you're recruiting for, if they're doing their work right, should be able to come to you with their competencies well defined. And if you're doing the work of defining their competencies for them, then you'd possibly better just charge them to go in there and help them develop a competency framework. But if I'm coming there and I'm saying I want to select leaders, and I just want to check their strategy, their ability to think in complexity, because our organization needs people who can think long term, 5 to 10 years. That's a lot of complexity. I cannot then offer you a personality assessment. I need to have in my arsenal a tool that checks a person's ability to think 5 to 10 years. And that's not going to be the same provider. But if I have that in my arsenal, then I'm able to say, we have a tool for that. And I can actually show you how it fits within what it is that you're looking for. So that would be my advice to you, Kefas. Get into partnerships, get them to present to you, then develop your own library of which assessments check for what competencies, and then just listen to your client and get to understand what are they really looking for. Advise them then that for these competencies, I believe the assessment that's going to give you that the data that you're looking for with this particular one.
Thank you for that feedback. There's a comment from Euphrasia where she's saying that this has been a very helpful session. They are in the process of reviewing their competency framework so that they align with the core competencies that will be critical post-leadership transition. They are in the midst of a transition at senior pastor level targeted for the end of August. So it seems there's a transition taking place. Any comment from you, Vicky?
That's quite commendable, and possibly I would then say you would wish to work with the AMADI group to make this dream a reality. Because once then you have this defined, you will need a way of measuring. So I do believe that you are in the great hands of Manku and Shadrian.
Thank you. I encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to raise your hand. If you're having challenges raising your hand, maybe you can unmute and then go ahead with your reaction or question. Thanks. Do we have any questions? I can't see any hands. I'm just checking again. I can see there's a message. No questions from Euphrasia. Are there any other questions just going around? Or comments, if any? Right, Francisca's reaction is that it's been an insightful session. Thank you for that reaction, Francisca. Yes, Miss or Mr. Hadebe? Yes, there will be access to the recording. I just want to go around once more because we're going to have a follow-up, a physical session where Vicky will be in the country and we'll be sharing more details. We're going to have a physical meeting, a masterclass that's taking place on the 9th of July. So we'll be sharing more details about that shortly. But I just want to make sure that there are no comments or questions. Do we have any comments or questions before we move on? Right. Okay. So in that case, since there are no questions or comments, could I invite Manku perhaps to just come back and just give a vote of thanks? Manku, in the same breath as you do, just please do remember to touch on the upcoming masterclass. I think for most of you that have registered, we've taken note of your registration details, and we will make a contact with you, possibly by phone. And for those that were able to, actually, we'll be able to meet you in person to just encourage you to come and attend the masterclass. And I think Manko will share more details. Manko, if you're on the call, please come back and perhaps just share a vote of thanks, and also just tell us more about the
All right.
upcoming masterclass.
Thank you so much, Vicky, for that very enriching session. Are you able to hear me clearly, Shazia?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Manko, please go ahead.
All right. Okay. So I would like to give a vote of thanks and some closing remarks on behalf of our Managing Director, Madam Beatrice Mwangi. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, participants, and colleagues. As we draw this enriching session to a close, it is my privilege to stand before you and on behalf of AMADI Development Group Limited to offer our most sincere and heartfelt vote of thanks. We begin by thanking our esteemed host, Madam Vicky Karuga, Managing Director of Profiles International. Ms. Karuga, your leadership, vision, and wavering support have made this People Intelligence webinar series possible. You opened your platform and your expertise to us, and we're truly honored by your partnership. Thank you. To the shareholders and management of both AMADI Development Group Limited and Profiles International, your strategic direction, confidence, and investment in people intelligence has given both organizations the foundation from which we serve our clients with excellence. We are grateful for your continued trust and leadership. A special and heartfelt word of appreciation goes out to our dedicated organizing team. Behind every seamless session is a team that has worked tirelessly behind the scenes, from technical setup to communication and coordination. Your commitment, professionalism, and passion for excellence do not go unnoticed. Thank you for making today's webinar a success. To every participant who has joined us today, your time is valuable, and we appreciate that you have chosen to invest it with us. Your presence, engagement, and the questions you raised made this session all the more insightful. We hope you leave today better equipped to leverage psychometrics and framework mapping in your organizations. Allow me to now tell you about our incoming People Intelligence Masterclass that will, as Shazia has mentioned, will start from the 9th to the 10th of July, 2026. And we are yet to inform you where the location is going to take place. For now, we have our email address written in the chat room where you can send us an email if you want us to write a formal invitation to your company. AMADI is thrilled to invite you to our upcoming People Intelligence Masterclass that is scheduled for the 9th to the 10th of July. This 2-day masterclass will be immersive, in-depth experience going beyond what today's webinar has covered, and is designed for HR practitioners, organizational leaders, and people-focused professionals who are committed to transforming how they attract, develop, and retain talent. So the full details of this masterclass, including the program content, registration, and fees, will be available on our website and across various social media platforms. We encourage you to keep an eye out for these updates. Additionally, participants will be added to a dedicated WhatsApp group that has been created specifically for communication purposes to ensure you receive timely updates, reminders, and any further information related to the masterclass. We look forward to welcoming you in July for what promises to be a truly transformational experience. Once again, on behalf of the directors, management, and team at AMADI Development Group Limited, and on behalf of our partners, Profiles International, thank you. And thank you for your time, your energy, your questions, and your commitment to people excellence. Over to you, Chazia.
All right. So I'm certainly looking forward to seeing most of you on the 9th of July. It's been an honor, and I do hope that we continue to interact on our various platforms. Shalom, shalom. See you till the 9th. I think we'll certainly be in touch. We'll send emails out to those that have confirmed in the chat section, and we'll certainly see you and hope to see you in person as we invite Vicky to come on. So thank you very much all, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you. Have a
you.
good
Bye.
day. Bye-bye. Bye.